Hello everyone, welcome back. So this time around I thought I'd demonstrate one of the other stamps in the Weekend Wow. So I'm going to be using this stamp, which we are calling Pen and Ink. Pen and Ink, lovely stamp. I just love the wee little sizes of them, just fabulous. Make your mark, pen and ink. It's got a lovely little, some background elements here that you could stamp, really love them. So, and also we're going to be using the Paint Your Dreams as well. So we're just using those stamp sets. So if you look at the packaging, you can get an idea of size there. So I just love those, absolutely love them. So I'm going to be using those two sets of stamps because I think they work together really well. So what I'm going to do is I've got a spare piece of card and I've got my 4.5 by 6.5 inch piece of white card, and I'm just going to braille some colours. So what I'm going to be using is tangerine, lemon and magenta. So I'm going to add these colours to my non-stick craft sheet. Just add a little bit of each colour, trying to make it so that I don't take up the whole desk so that you can't see what I'm doing. And the magenta. Just tidy up a little bit. Spare piece of card so I can braille off the excess. And then I'm just going to braille those colours together. And then I'm going to braille them onto the background. Just look at that for colour. Wow. Wonderful colour. And I'm just going to braille off the excess. Now you could probably create 2, 3, 4 backgrounds with that if you wanted to. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to use a touch of Olga's stencil in the background, just a little touch of it. So I just need a little wipe, a little baby wipe, and I'm just going to remove some of that colour with my baby wipe. I just want it to be subtle. I don't want it to be too overpowering. So I'm just removing some of that colour. And there you can see that is plenty. That's all I need. So just pick up this colour. Now what you would do with keep brailing off the excess paint. Keep brailing off that excess paint onto a spare piece of card, because then you will end up with several backgrounds in one sitting. So just remove that. Move my brayer out of the way and then just dry. Just so that we're working in a clean area. And I will lift this up so you can see. We've now got 2 backgrounds. We've got 2 backgrounds. So you could create 2 cards in one sitting. So just give that a dry. And that stencil is so detailed. Sometimes you can use the whole stencil or you can just use part of it. And I just love it. Absolutely love it. So I'm just drying because there's a lot of moisture in that card. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to use it this way. I'm going to use it horizontal, so I want to use it that way. And I just love that touch of detail in the background. And then what I'm going to do is use this little background stamp, place that on my card. No, on my acrylic block. Come on, Tracy, not card, acrylic block. And I need to place it the right way up because I'm not. That's it. That's it. I had it the wrong way up. So what I want to do then is I want to use just like a red colour in the background, just to keep with that brightness. So I'm using Archival Ink Vermilion, and I'm just adding a touch of that ink to the background stamp. And I'm just going to add a little bit of random stamping to the background. That's all it needs, some random stamping. And just think that's lovely. Just a touch of random stamping to the background. And it's just these little touches that draw the eye in. So you've got the stenciling in the background and then you've got the numbers in the background as well. It just sort of draws the eye in. And then what I'm going to do is I've got some strips of card here. I tend to not bin my strips of card. I love using strips of card because they can either act like a shelf or just another layered element. So I'm just going to adhere these pieces of strips of card. So don't bin those strips of card that you've got, because you never know when you might use them. So I've got some different thicknesses here. So just get my card, and I always play around. So, whoops, just cut this down a little bit. Just add this here. Yep. So add this card again. And I'm just creating like a shelf for my little paintbrushes and things. Just a little shelf. And then I've got a little strip of card which I can add like this. It's surprising how much you can do with a few bits of card, a little bit of paint and ink. It's amazing what you can create. So just add that there, like so. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to see if there's any paint left on my brayer, because then I'm just going to brayer over the card a little bit, just to add a touch of that colour to the little shelves, as I call them. Just adding a little element, which I love that. So then what I'm going to do is I'm going to get a spare piece of card, and let's stamp our paintbrushes just so we can see them. You can see there we've got all the paintbrushes. Now this one here, this paintbrush here, if you purchased my border stamp that I did on the craft, I used on the craft along way back in January, this border stamp, this little one coordinates perfectly with that larger border stamp. So I'm always trying to make sure that everything works together in some shape or form. So they work beautifully together. So if you wanted to get some contrast in size and shape, then that border stamp also works beautifully with it. So just stamp that onto there, like so. Now this was a spare piece of card that left on the side. It was a spare piece of card left on the side. And I've just realised it's a lovely length and shape and size that you could actually use this for the card as well. I mean, that, could you imagine that just on a card like so, and then just a sentiment? If you wanted something really classy and crisp, or if you were sending somebody just a note, just stamped like that is just brilliant. You don't need anything else, do you? You could literally, this is when stamps sing and they work, because that on its own just looks fantastic, even on its own. So I've got these little paintbrushes here, got them here, like so. Let's bring these in. Just look at them, they're just fab. Love them. So I've cut those out, and I'm just going to add a little bit of paint to my non-stick craft sheet. Just a tiny bit of paint of the 3 colours I used before. So just a little bit, not much, just a little bit of the paint. Of course, when you're trying to do a video, your paint doesn't want to come out of the tube, does it? Which is about standard. So just brayer that paint off, and then just add a little bit of paint to your paintbrushes. And what's good is if you do it this way, it's more random. You're not thinking about it too much. It gives a more arty feel to your project, a more arty feel, which is what I really love. So just bring those in like so. I think I'm even going to use the other card that we've just created as well. Could end up with 2 cards for the price of 1. So what I do now is I'm going to play around with my composition. So I'm going to add my little paintbrushes like so to my project, just to add, just to give different heights. See, this is what I love about stamps. Stamps are just fantastic. Not that you could tell I like stamps, can you? You can't tell I like stamps. So we're just going to take, I'll keep changing the composition, you watch. I've placed them down one way and they'll end up going down another way because that's just the way I am. So I'm just adding these elements, just a little bit of adhesive to each of the elements. And I've just remembered that I've got some paintbrush embellishments and I've got to find them. So I'm now trying to rack my brain where they will be. Isn't it funny how you remember things? One of the things about working from home is that you end up shuffling and looking for things because you know they're at hand, and because you know they're at hand, you end up looking for them. Whereas when you're live at a chanda, you haven't got that luxury because you have to remember to take everything all in one go. See, I'm giving away all my secrets here. So just adhere these like so. I love that little paint tube. It's the lid. I love the lid. I just love them. I just think they're so cute. And these would work brilliant in a shaker element as well. In a shaker element. Just love them. And for any crafty friends or artistic friends, you know, creating a card for them is just fab. I like the fact there's so many different elements in the stamp sets. Just stamp that there. And then what we can do, let me just take my acrylic block. And what we've got is these little stamps here. And what you can do is they're all individual. Now they're all individual for a reason, because you can create your own composition. If you don't want them in straight lines, you can create your own composition. So you can create wiggly lines with them, random, you know, you can create your own backgrounds with them. That's the whole point of them being individual. Because I wanted you to be able to play around with them. And if you just wanted to use one, then you didn't have to mask that off. So I'm just inking those up. And then I'm just going to add this little stamped element in the, oh, they are lovely, love them. So that's this element here in the pen and ink, this element in the stamp set here. Just love it. Just adding that little detail. And because you can add them however you want to the acrylic block, means you're making your own little stamp in a way. You're making your own little composition with your stamp, which is what I quite look. I like that. So I'm just going to stamp a couple more of those, like so. Just stamp a couple more. Just love it. Just one more, because it has to be odd numbers, because I'm just like that and it doesn't feel right if it isn't in odd numbers. There we go. And then what I'm going to do is put them back and then get a sentiment or text. So just place those back. Doesn't really matter which order you place them in, because really I tend to use them for random stamping rather than to stamp out anything else. I like them as random stamping. So then what I'm going to do is take the Create from our first stamp set, to take that sentiment Create, because that's exactly what we're doing. We are creating, and obviously the perfect word to go with. And again, I'm just using a strip of that card that was spare, that I had over spare. So I'm just going to use that and add the word Create. I just love how crisply those stamp. I just think they're brilliant. And then I'm just thinking about now where I want my sentiment. So do I want it, so I need to cut it down a little bit because that's too big. So cut that sentiment down a little bit. We don't want it too big. So cut that down here. like so. Just make sure I've got no black on my hand, which I have, because you don't want to smudge that. And then I'm going to add this here, like that, create. And then I can add a touch of the red ink around the outside edges. Just moving my ink pad just away from the card, because I know what I'll do, I'll end up dropping it, and we don't want to do that. So just add create to our project, create. Lovely font, I love that font. We then want to add some white splatters. Oh, that's a good splatter. And then what you can do is, just to make it look a bit more lifelike, so let me just get one of my smaller tubes of paint. And then what you can do is, with the smaller tubes of paint, you can add a little, like blobs, just little blobs of the paint, just so it looks more realistic. So just add a little blob of paint, like so, and then you can add a little trail of paint just from your, it's just making, these little touches are what make it just more realistic, you know, just adding little blobs of paint. And then what we can do, oh, way too much paint, not a problem. You just reach for my old credit card, and what I tend to find with yellow is, yellow really lifts a design. It really makes everything pop. I don't use yellow too often, but when I do, I just think it makes everything pop. So just add some of those scratchy lines, like so. One more, so we've got an odd number, and that is perfect. So then what we're going to do is we're going to add this to a black mat, like so. So you add that to a black mat. Just look how it pops against a black mat. Don't smudge your paint, which is what I was just about to do. Add that to your black mat, and then add that to a white card. And look how fabulous that looks. These are just wonderful. I just love them. I just think they're fab, and with these little touches as well. But do you remember this card? Do you remember this one? Let me just move some of my stuff out of the way. So you remember this, where we just created. So what we can do now, just take a bit more of this paint, just showing you a quick idea. While we're on, we can do 2 cards for the price of 1. Why not? Just do 2 cards. Just move out these scraps of paper. What we can do is get a scrap of card, brayer this paint. So we've got quite a bit of paint on our brayer. And then what you can do, move everything out the way, brayer lightly over. We haven't got much pink on there, but let's just get rid of the excess onto a piece of card. Take a little bit more pink. Take a little bit more of the pink. So we've got a touch of that pink. Go back over again, so that your paintbrushes feel like they are vanishing inside the card. So that was just the piece of card, you remember, that we just lightly added layers to. So just, and I think this little sentiment is perfect. Let's just place this back, create, and this one, and this is just an added extra. I wasn't planning on doing this card, but it seems a shame to waste that. I think it does anyway. I think it seems a shame to waste that. So let's not waste that. And then what we can do, add that sentiment, colour outside the lines. Colour outside the lines, absolutely brilliant. So bring in our 2 cards here. I mean, that was just created from a scrap of card. It wasn't even planned. So just to finish off, just on this one, let me just move that out the way. I can bring that back in shortly. But on this card, what we can do is add a little paintbrush, yes, a little paintbrush embellishment to the side of the card, like so. Take a little bit of your paint and put that on your finger, and then just add that to your embellishment. Little bit of the pink. I like using my fingers. Little bit of pink, and then I forget and go and put it on a card then. Little bit of pink. Just clean my hands just so that we don't end up in a total mess. But as you can see, you've now got 2 cards created nice and simply. Let's bring these in. So this card wasn't even a card, it was a scrap of paper, and all I've done is braid. That's a clean and simple scrap left over, and I love the colour outside the lines, but that was just a scrap piece. This was the card that we were creating, and just so you can see a little bit more of that detail, I just adore those stamps. Just think, they're so easy to use, so easy to create with, and if you wanted to create a canvas or add them inside a shadow box or a tin, they would work beautifully. So I hope you enjoyed that demo, and I'll see you shortly. Bye.